Welcome, everyone. It is 6:02 p.m. I have already called this meeting to order, and we'll go ahead and start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand, please. Called this meeting to order, and we'll go ahead and start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Superintendent Macaluso, do you have any corrections or modifications to the agenda?
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, there are no corrections or modifications to the agenda.
Then I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
I'll call the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi?
Aye.
Mr. Farrell?
Aye.
Judge Mays?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Dr. Wright?
Aye.
And we'll start off tonight with a school staff student presentation. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. As a precursor to Counselors Appreciation Week, we have some outstanding counselors who will present promising practices. So I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Bravo, who will introduce us to our team.
Thank you very much. Again, President Voss, Superintendent Macaluso, and members of the board. And as Mrs. Macaluso just mentioned, next week is National School Counselors Week. We thought it would be very fitting for tonight that we bring in one of our counseling departments from our district. And as you can imagine, this is a very atypical year. Our counseling teams are having to work, a little bit differently than they would in the past. I'm very honored to welcome Mrs. Tanya Odell, head counselor at Centennial High School, and her crew to share with you some of the things that they've been up to this year. So with that, Ms. Odell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Bravo. Good evening, President Voss, Superintendent Macaluso, and school board members. I am Tanya Odell.
Hello, I am Summer Kelly.
And I'm Kendra Hawkes. And we are part of the counseling department at Centennial High School. We are here today to talk to you about some of the promising practices we have been using to support our students, families, and staff. With the changes of the times, our delivery system has also changed, and we utilize Google Classroom, Google Meets, email, phone calls, and in-person visits by appointments.
Over the next few minutes, we will show you how our counseling department works with students and staff in academic, career, and social-emotional domains.
One of our promising practices, especially during the pandemic, has been empowering our staff by providing skills, strategies, and lessons to do with students to create a solid foundation and comforting environment. We have done this by providing professional development, focusing on strategies about building relationships during a virtual delivery and in-person delivery with social distancing. Throughout this semester, we have also provided many opportunities for self-care for our staff as well. For example, we planned and facilitated yoga and other workouts, including one taught by our very own principal, Mr. Craddock. We also did a 50-day run walk challenge and created a partnership with Kaiser for prizes. As a result, our participants walked over 1,500 miles. With this, teachers have also incorporated a focus on mental health into classes in several ways. In our next slide, we have a teacher who would like to tell you more.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Fodnight, and I teach social studies at Centennial High School. And I just want to give a couple of quick words about some of the benefits that I've received from the counseling department as far as them supporting teachers' resources. They have started a mindfulness campaign in the classroom, and they've kind of gone over like for teachers and share like what we could do for mindfulness for students. They've gone over goal setting as well as gratefulness. I've actually done all of those things with my kids, and I think it's very beneficial as well as for myself, setting goals and being mindful. And also one of the things that I particularly love is the yoga that they set up.
As you can see, our teachers have really taken advantage of the support we provide. Something else we started this year was a building initiative of reaching before teaching. We wanted to slow down to focus on building relationships with students. These are the 7 lessons we provided for teachers to teach all students. In addition to these lessons, we created videos for students, showing them how to use Google Calendar, Google Classroom, how to understand their grades, and how to understand their transcripts. Throughout our presentation, we will be highlighting some of these lessons. The first lesson we'd like to highlight is the mindfulness lesson. We'd like for you all to join us in a short guided mindfulness activity that we did with our students and staff. Please close your eyes. Now imagine yourself in a peaceful place, a place where you feel calm and safe. Maybe it's a special place that you've been before, or maybe it's somewhere you would like to go. Perhaps somewhere like a beautiful beach, beside a gentle forest stream, or sitting by a warm, crackling fire. Picture yourself in this place. Imagine what you are experiencing through all of your senses. Now look around you. Notice what you see. Notice what you hear. Notice what you smell. Notice what you feel under your feet, on your skin. Allow yourself to relax in this place. You are completely at peace here. It may take some time to learn how to let go of tension and relax your body. You can come back to this place as often as you would like. When you feel ready, gently open your eyes and return to the present moment. Thank you for taking the time to do this activity with us. Hopefully you are all a little more relaxed.
Thank you, Miss Kelly. That warm, crackling fire sounds good right about now. I can tell you that much. The next promising practice we want to highlight is Sources of Strength. Sources of Strength is a school-wide initiative that is at all of our high schools and middle schools, and it focuses on using one's strengths when feeling angry, sad, or anxious. These strengths include positive friends, healthy activities, generosity, and mental and physical health access, just to name a few. Here is a clip from one of the videos we did to encourage leaning into healthy activities while at home. As you can see, we had a lot of fun making that video. In addition, with the help of other clubs such as Student Council and the Gay Straight Alliance, of which we are the sponsors, we have been able to run other campaigns and activities like Trusted Adults, You Belong, and the one we are currently working on, Connect.
In July of last year, we had a few students ask about starting a Gay Straight Alliance Club. Our GSA club focuses on helping lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning students feel safe and supported at Centennial High School, as well as teaching others about the LGBTQ community. We currently have over 20 kids in the club and look forward to adding more students. This is a video of 2 of those students talking about why they wanted a GSA club at Centennial.
I'm Santana Reyes.
And I'm Ciara Reyes. We started a GSA at Centennial to originally help and support a friend who wanted to create a safe and non-toxic place for LGBT plus students and allies to socialize. After some work, time, and help, we realized that we could really create a good atmosphere for our LGBT plus peers.
We went to the counselors to start this because we thought that they would be the most supportive and because of the previous work that we've seen at Centennial.
Alrighty, thanks.
Thank you.
Since starting GSA, we have had 2 movie nights along with the Spanish Club and Student Council, a game night with Sources of Strength students, and 2 inclusive awareness weeks. Last Friday, as part of the Teachers PD Day, 4 of the students from GSA gave a presentation to the staff about the importance of using students' preferred pronouns and names and what role they can play in helping LGBTQ plus students feel supported at Centennial. This is a picture of our administration participating in the Pronoun Day for National Transgender Awareness Week.
We are very proud of our innovative work around college and career readiness. We invited our partners from the University Track Center and CSUP to join us in a podcast to address all questions regarding going to college in a pandemic. With the help of Lacey from the UTC, we have had a virtual FAFSA night and also a virtual financial aid question and answer presentation. In addition, over 100 Centennial students participated in the free application day where they were part of Colorado seniors saving $2.3 million in application fees. Another program we'd like to share with you is Major Clarity. Major Clarity is a program we use to help students develop their individual career and academic plans. These are results from one of the Major Clarity activities we did at the beginning of the school year. Students were able to explore their career interest. The top career interest of our students are teaching, journalism, and educational support. We are excited to know that we have many students aspiring to be teachers and hopefully some school counselors. This is another assessment students took using Major Clarity, where they were able to explore their learning styles. We were able to share this information with teachers so that they could be aware of how their students learn best. This is especially important now that we are living in such a digital learning environment.
Moving forward, we wanted to figure out how parents want to receive information. So we sent out a survey and these are the results. As you can see, an e-newsletter is the most popular along with small groups and the website. With the data from our survey, we plan on starting a newsletter that will be emailed to parents and guardians, continue the podcast we started last March, and the family workshops we started this year. We also plan on starting virtual small groups with parents and guardians that we are calling Coffee with Counselors.
As you can see, our future is bright at Centennial. Next week on Wednesday, February 3rd, at 6 p.m., we are excited to host our virtual 8th grade enrollment expo. Please visit the Centennial website for more information. During this night, we will be live, the counselors will be live, and in a Google Meet and available to answer any questions and help families get enrolled. With that, we want to thank you for your time and your attention tonight. And remember, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. Are there any questions?
I'll just go down the line and see if there are any questions for you, Dr. Wright.
I have no questions, but I just want to thank you for your work. And counselors, you're very important to us. So thank you for your hard work.
Judge Mays.
Thank you for a very impressive presentation and for the continuing care and love that you have for all students.
Mr. Farrell.
I don't have any questions. I wrote down a few things, though. I think I should remember to always do a mindfulness exercise before a board meeting. So thank you for sharing that with us tonight. I'm really excited that you're collecting data about how to engage parents better. I think that that's awesome. So thank you for doing that work. And my biggest thing that I want to thank you for is being the sponsors of the GSA. It's very important to have those types of organizations in our schools so that kids can feel safe and can feel engaged in a school environment. A couple board meetings ago, I talked about how excited I was to know that One Colorado was doing PD with staff, which is important. But man, to have students come and share their experiences and what life is like for an LGBTQ plus student and how staff can be more supportive is amazing. So I'm very excited about the things that are happening there and really want to thank you for your work.
Ms. Clementi.
Also, I just want to double down on the thanks and the gratefulness for the work that you do, and the grace with which you've taken on all of these new challenges for everyone. And I, with Mr. Farrell, are delighted to hear that you are sponsoring the GSA and hope that you can keep that strong and vibrant, because as you said, it's so important for all kids. Anything that we can do to help support you, just let us know. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you as well for being with us here tonight. And thank you for the work that you do. It's incredibly important all the time, but especially now when people feel so isolated. So thank you for that. And I agree with Mr. Farrell's thoughts on the Just Breathe activity. I've never been so calm for a board meeting. So I really appreciate that too. Thank you.
Tanya, Kendra, and Summer, thank you for representing your counseling colleagues. You represented them well. Thank you for giving us an insight to the tremendous work that you do. Know that you're valued, that you're appreciated. And I know that this is a time that you have had to adapt and stretch and go far above and beyond. And it's appreciated and it's acknowledged, the work that you're doing. So thank you for creating an inclusive, positive culture at your school and making a difference in the lives of our students. Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight.
And I believe we don't have any public comment for tonight. So we'll move to 4.0, gifts to schools. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. I would ask that the Board of Education accept the following gifts to School District 60 in the amount of $8,943. The first gift is an anonymous donor donated $1,000 to Pueblo South High School. An anonymous donor also donated $1,000 to Pueblo East High School football program. Ruth Lee Stirk donated $200 cash to the South Park Elementary School Media Center. BH Colorado Electric LLC donated $3,000 to Bessemer Academy for their sponsorship for Christmas boxes for Bessemer Academy students. An anonymous donor donated $743 cash to the South High School boys basketball team. East High School Alumni Foundation donated $2,000 to East High School for educational purposes. And Alignment Kings and Services LLC donated $1,000 to East High School boys basketball program.
And I will move that we approve and accept the gifts to schools as presented in tonight's board materials.
Clementi, second.
I'll call the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi,
Aye.
Mr. Farrell,
Aye.
Judge Mays,
Aye.
Mr. Voss,
Aye.
Dr. Wright.
Aye.
Thank you, as always, to all of our donors. We'll move now to 7.0, Communications Board Comments. Are there any communications anyone would like to share?
President Voss, we do have a recognition, 5.0, if we could go back.
And I'm sorry, I don't see that on my agenda.
So, Jerry, I think we have a 5.0 recognition on the agenda. Do you see that?
Superintendent Macaluso, I believe that that recognition was coming under communications, the acknowledgement.
Okay. So I must have an outdated agenda that I'm reading that's been printed. Okay. Are we on communications now then?
We are.
Okay. Okay, so I have a communication. We have board appreciation for the month of January. And so we'd like to acknowledge our board members for their service. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Sprouse.
Well, thank you, Superintendent Macaluso. President Voss, members of the board, I always look forward to January because the governor puts out a proclamation recognizing the great and difficult work that you all do as public servants to our public education system, specifically here in D60. We know that there are board members throughout the state that do the same, and we're so appreciative. But today I'd like to share with you the proclamation issued on behalf of the governor and read that for you right now. Allow me to present my screen just one moment. Whereas the education of our children is vital to the future of Colorado, and whereas a solid education establishes the foundation upon which society builds achievement and advancement, and which also gives fulfillment to students' dreams and expectations, and whereas local school board members are committed to children and the belief that all children can be successful learners with the intentional allocation of resources, instruction, and opportunities according to need. Whereas local school board members work closely with parents, educational professionals, and other community members to create the educational vision we want for our students. And whereas local school board members work closely, and whereas local school board members are responsible for ensuring the structure that provides a solid foundation for our school system. And whereas local school board members are strong advocates for public education and are responsible for communicating the needs of the school district to the public and the public's expectations to the district. And whereas school board members are extraordinary people who invest many hours of volunteer work to tackle the enormous job of governing our school districts and whose actions and decisions help impact the present and future lives of young Coloradoans. And whereas the dedication of school board members across the state should be recognized and commended, therefore I, Jared Polis, Governor of the state of Colorado, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2021 as School Board Recognition Month. Signed, Governor Polis. Board members, we as a school district just can't express our gratitude enough to you all as not only the leaders of our school district, but volunteers who raised their hand high and said, I'm here to serve children. And with every decision I make, it will be in their best interest. I want to thank you for your service to our community, and most importantly, your service to our children. They depend on you. Thank you.
I just want to express my sincere appreciation and my gratitude for your service. Serving on a school board is no easy task. Many people don't realize that it's a voluntary position, and it requires lots of time. It requires you to devote your time and talent and lots of preparation, reading through materials and so forth, and many difficult decisions that you have to make. I'm very thankful for each and every one of you. We all come with varied perspectives, and we sometimes don't agree, and that's okay. But what I do know is that at the end of the day, you make decisions that are in the best interest of our students. And I am very thankful that you are serving on this board. We have accomplished many great initiatives and many great achievements in our district, and it makes a difference in our broader community. And so thank you for serving in that manner. We have a small token of appreciation. I don't know if you can see this. We will be delivering this to you. It is a print, and Mr. Sprouse is going to. It is a print of the mural that is at Minnequa Elementary. You probably have seen the video in association with that. And so, Mr. Sprouse, can you give us a little bit of background?
I sure can. Well, as the superintendent mentioned, students at Minnequa Elementary were very fortunate to be part of the public participation program as part of the Gateway to the Southwest. Now, as Puebloans, we know that the Gateway to the Southwest is constructing some huge structures at the north side of town as you enter into our community to welcome travelers to the beauty that we have here. And we know that starting here at Pueblo, everything looks a little bit different. We're the gateway to the Southwest. And so the students got to be engaged, at Minnequa got to be engaged in the process. They even took trips to Summit Brick and the Williams Family Studio to learn how those structures were made. They even shaved off some of the pieces of the bricks that are now already constructed. But they also participated in writing lessons, in lessons in movement and critical creativity thought process. And in doing so, they wrote down words that they associated with Pueblo. Words like friends, family, fun, pets, fishing. All of these words kept coming to the surface. And it was really a beautiful thing to be able to look at those documents that Glenn Valentine and others at Minnequa took those and worked collaboratively with an artist named Joe Caulfield to take their writings and to take their videos that they sent them and to show what our community looks like through the eyes of a child. Joe Caulfield encompassed many of the structures that our kids were familiar with. Places like the library, the arts center. There are places that you'll see when you receive your copy that are very recognizable throughout our community. And we couldn't be more grateful to Joe Caulfield for sharing that with us and now sharing that with you as you get a replica print of the painting that's now permanently installed at Minnequa. So I'd like to share with you, as you probably saw from some of the other videos, it also from some of the other videos, the students also worked on language that was then developed into a jingle that Glenn Valentine wrote. And Glenn Valentine has worked with the Monkees. I mean, Glenn Valentine's, he's a pretty amazing guy. But what was really neat is because of COVID, we had to get kind of creative in how we recorded this. And the Pueblo Children's Chorale provided one sample that, that we used in the video. But South High's entertainers, under the direction of Rebecca Clock, they also recorded the jingle and gave us a remixed version So I'm going to share with you a video that's going to just kind of quickly highlight where we've been in the last couple weeks with this project. And it's going to close this time not with the young children singing the jingle, but you'll get to hear the remixed version that the South High School entertainers put together. So allow me to share my screen one more time and I'll present this video to you.
It's such an honor for me to be a part of celebrating the involvement of the Gateway to the Southwest project, a vision that I had in terms of bringing recognition to the cultural diversity of our community.
Just as the Gateway of the Southwest will hold symbolism for all of Pueblo County, we hope too that those children that participated in the program will have learned the significance of community investment and recognize the time, talent, and treasures of our local professionals. Today, we celebrate the achievements that working together in a new and innovative way can afford the next generation.
As part of this program, the children were asked their thoughts on what their school, neighborhood, and city mean to them. Through drawings, words, and actions, they shared a vision of Pueblo that has an honesty and purity that flow directly from their hearts.
This program has inspired scholars to be creative and to be proud that Pueblo is their home, to be proud of where they live, what they learn, and who they are. While working through offered programs, our scholars had opportunities to describe what our school community means to them. They spoke of moral character, friendships, grit, empathy, safety, and so much more.
Every time these young people pass by the completed Gateway to the Southwest sculptures or their replicas on the Riverwalk, the children on those tours will remember that day when they saw them being created. When we see Pueblo through the eyes of a child and hear the jingle they created, I hope it will renew our own appreciation for that special place we call home.
Thank you to all those whose dedication and hard work turned yesterday's vision into today's reality for Pueblo County.
Today, we thank our students for sharing their vision with us. We thank Legacy Bank for making this possible, Glenn Valentine for sharing his passion of music, art, and movement with our kids. And we thank the many others who have devoted their time to invest in the future of our community. Most of all, we thank you for joining us as we all work together to inspire the future generations of Pueblo, Colorado. And without any further ado, we will now unveil the Gateway to the Southwest painting permanently installed right here at Minnequa Elementary School in Pueblo, Colorado.
Again, we just want to thank you today, and we will be delivering your framed replica prints of the painting at Minnequa at a later date, and we'll make sure to get those to you as soon as possible.
Well, Superintendent Macaluso and Mr. Sprouse, thank you so much. I tell people all the time, I think this is the toughest job that I'll ever have, but it's also the most meaningful work that I'll ever do. So it really is an honor to serve on this board, and we really appreciate it. Are there any other communications from the board? Dr. Ray?
I just want to thank you also. I have a big old smile on my face, and warmth in my heart, and I'm grateful. We are grateful to serve our community. And you're right, President Voss, it is the hardest job. I was a principal in a juvenile prison. It was easier than this. But at the same time, it is rewarding. And so that was an awesome presentation. So tell the governor and all that we say thank you so much.
Judge Mace.
I agree on the difficulty of the work. But more importantly, I just want to express my thanks to the community for allowing us the opportunity to serve them and their children.
Mr. Farrell.
Thank you, Superintendent Macaluso and Mr. Sprouse for the recognition. I agree with everything my colleagues have said so far. You've hit it on the head, though, that we're all here to do what's best for the kids in our community. And I can't think of a better way to recognize that than having a print of a mural that represents how our students see our community. And I really want to thank you for that.
Ms. Clementi.
My thanks, I'll add to the heap as well for thinking of us, for the lovely gift, which I know well I'll treasure, and once again for the opportunity to serve.
Are there any other communications from the board?
Mr. Barth, if I may, please.
Sure.
On Friday, a meeting with the Education Leadership Council was convened for a 2-hour Zoom meeting. I am one of the 25 members on that council. That was I was appointed by Governor Polis to serve on there, and the council started before Governor Polis was governor, and it's been progressing over the years. The council itself is chaired by Katie Anthus, the Director of Education in the state of Colorado, Dr. Anthus, and Senator Bob Rankin from the legislature. What's interesting is 2 other members that are on the council are Patty Erjavik, Dr. Erjavik from the president of Pueblo Community College, and also Joe Garcia, who previously was the president of the University of Southern Colorado Pueblo and now serves as the CEO of the Colorado Community Colleges board. He's the leader of that particular organization. And we spent 2 hours, and I'd like to just kind of go through a lot of the things that we talked about, give you some observations. We've been meeting regularly, and we'll be meeting again next month. But some of the concerns that were raised is, and obviously we have to put this in the context of what's going on with the pandemic. All our lives have been turned upside down as a result of that. And you can imagine what's going on a statewide basis in terms of trying to deal with these matters on a daily basis. I'm sure Dr. Anthus has many sleepless nights trying to figure out how to maneuver everything with things that change by the minute. There's concern about the reading loss from K-3, K to 3, and the necessary steps that are going to need to be taken to address that particular concern. But it was also noted that they have the information and the data that seems to indicate that it's not only K-3, but it's also 4th and 5th graders, that there is a reading loss, and that it's something that we're going to have to address in some fashion or another. Obviously, mental health was a huge topic of concern, not only for the students, but also for the staff, and a discussion about going forward with professional development in these areas, as well as dealing with teacher fatigue and having to bounce around from this forum to that forum on a constant basis. It's no question but that we asked our educators to step into a very difficult role in terms of going into the virtual classroom. And there's no question about it, while they've been outstanding and have gone above and beyond in their service, that there is a recognition that we as a state need to get better at the virtual setting. There needs to be professional development in that area. And it's interesting to note that also many of our teachers, our educators, did not learn to become educators in this kind of a setting. And so there is a mixed bag right now about whether some of those teachers will want to continue. I don't think there's going to be any doubt in anybody's mind, but that there is going to be some form of virtual learning from here on out. It's not going to go away. I'm not suggesting we're going to be doing online schools, and I don't think the council's suggesting that. But what we have learned that there are also some benefits of the virtual classroom setting, including the opportunity with some work to extend the educational process across school boundaries. Now, when you say that and you start worrying about local control and all that, but the point being not about local control, but the point being is sharing those successes in one particular school district or one specific town or throughout the state of Colorado in terms of being able to reach out and with some of our master teachers and providing that education to the students wherever they might find themselves. A look at career technical education is another challenge. The other thing that we found, and I think Board Member Clementi has mentioned on a number of occasions, the issue of equity. And right now we're finding that the broadband access really has presented some serious problems, particularly in the rural areas, and it's inequitable because those students don't have the same opportunities. It's not anybody's particular fault about it, but it's a matter of fact something that we have to address. There is a real concern about opportunity gaps in education and the need to build partnerships with families and with businesses. And as I indicated, and I don't know that I'll say it another time, but I might, is the mental health issue is just really huge. As I indicated, there was concern about shifting into the remote classroom learning session and a broad discussion of how that's going to look and how we're going to start defining seat time again. How is that? And which leads us obviously to competency-based education, individualized education. How's that supposed to look? The work was, as I indicated, it was a 2-hour meeting. When you have that many people on there, while it was an excellent meeting and going into depth, and was rather difficult because of the number of participants. But it's clear to me that the focus is there, and that we know that we're in a whole different realm now, and we're going to have to take some extraordinary steps to deliver the quality education that our children deserve. And not lost in this discussion, and by the way, Governor Polis was at the meeting for a short period of time. He addressed the council, was the inequitable funding of education in the state of Colorado. And it always comes down to that. I read an article today in Chalkbeat It's amazing to me what some of our teachers are being paid and what they're expected to live on. And it's, I'm not casting blame or anything, but it's wrong. It is just flat wrong. Perhaps the most important part of our workforce is not treated, at least financially, with the respect that they need to be treated. So a lot of issues coming up, a lot of things that we're going to have to work on to see where we're going to go. I think it also gives us a lot of opportunities to re-examine the way we've done education in the past and look at calendaring and other areas. And this is going on statewide. I might add that there are a number of the 25 members who are teachers and superintendents and principals. So there are folks from the workforce, the whole bit. So I'll keep you posted on that. Our next meeting is the middle of next month. We'll see where we go from there. We also break out into subgroups as well. I'm on the K-12 subgroup, and also I'm also working with the group that works on community collaboratives and that sort of thing. And finally, I want to say how grateful I am that Superintendent Macaluso is still with us, and we just extended her contract as I read across the 4 or 5 or 6 superintendents across the state that are leaving after this year. And so we have our challenges, but we've been given a lot of opportunities to re-examine how we do things. I think we really need to take a close look at that. Some of it won't be easy. One size doesn't fit all, but the conversation is there on the table. Unfortunately, a lot of what's come to our attention is because of the pandemic. And I guess what that tells us is maybe we need to be more forward thinking from here on out and not waiting for a crisis before we start taking at times what are going to be controversial measures, I'm sure, in terms of the K-12 education in the state of Colorado. So I don't know if any of you have any questions about that, but I'm certainly appreciative of your time, and I will keep you posted on anything further that comes out of the council.
Thank you, Judge Mays. Ms. Clementi, did you have communications as well?
I do, and thank you, Judge, for your work on that that committee. It's great to have District 60 represented, and I know it's hard work and it's elevating work, and it can be exciting, but it certainly does create lots of questions and lots of opportunities. Hopefully we can, with District 60, begin to do some of that forward-looking that you mentioned. I have, of course, been attending the Colorado School Finance Project meetings and listening to the legislation and the expected legislation and the financial outlooks for the state. I think it's important to note that our seniors, our current seniors, have spent their entire lives in public education in Colorado in an underfunded system. The practice of the negative factor began when they were in kindergarten. And so they have never experienced a fully funded education system, whether it be a hybrid or remote or in person. And as we move forward, of course, I'm not sure that's going to get any better, dealing with the financial challenges that the states and our districts are going to see over the next couple of years. I've been attending the PACOG meetings. And while there's not a lot of direct implications for education, that we're here, that we're at the table, always, I think, is important for them to remember that education is the basis of everything that happens in the city. I also attended a retreat with the Colorado Association of School Boards with their planning and training and professional development, which has provided a lot of great information that I think we can use. As you know, I've requested a conversation about whether we at our district are ready to start a conversation around equity. And lastly, it was kind of cool last week on the first full day of her official position. Dr. Jill Biden addressed teachers and educators across the country with the message of hope and inclusiveness and gratefulness for all that educators do. And that was very uplifting. If you haven't seen it, I would urge you to find it on YouTube or one of the social media outlets. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clementi. Are there any other communications from the board?
Mr. Voss, I have a quick one.
Sure.
I wanted to piggyback on what board member Clementi was saying about school finance and just let everyone who's watching and those of us here in the meeting to know as well that the Joint Budget Committee is having public comment tomorrow at 1:30. If it's virtual public comment also, so that makes it easier than driving to Denver to testify in front of the Joint Budget Committee. So if anyone is interested in information on how to participate in that opportunity, let me know.
Thank you for that, Mr. Farrell. Any other communications? Okay, we will move on to 8.0 special resolutions, and we have National School Counseling Week proclamation. Dr. Wright.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me pull it up. The National School Counseling Week proclamation, February 1 through 5, 2021. Whereas schools counselors are employed in public and private schools to help students reach their full potential, and whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to career awareness and development, and whereas school counselors help parents focus potential and set realistic goals for themselves, and whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society, and whereas comprehensive developmental school counseling programs are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve in success. Therefore, we, the Board of Education of Public School District 60, do hereby proclaim February 1st through the 5th, 2021 as National School Counseling Week. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
And with that, I will move that we proclaim February 1st through the 5th, 2021 as National School Counseling Week as presented in tonight's board materials.
I second.
I'll call the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi,
Aye.
Mr. Farrow,
Aye.
Judge Mays,
Aye.
Mr. Voss,
Aye.
Dr. Wright.
Aye.
And with that, we'll move to 9.0 reports. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, it's my pleasure to be able to hear a report on Risley International Academy of Innovation. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Suzanne Morey, who will introduce our guests.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Macaluso. Tonight we have two facilitators who are going to be presenting our progress report on Risley International. The first is Lindsay Jekyll from the Colorado Department of Education. Lindsay is the Executive Director of School and District Transformation. And our second presenter is Jennifer Bauer. Jennifer is an Associate Dean of Regional Support Programs for the Relay Graduate School of Education. I am going to share my screen, and then I will turn it over to you, Lindsay.
Great. Good evening, Superintendent Macaluso, Board President Voss, and members of the board. Hopefully you can hear me okay. As Suzanne mentioned, my name is Lindsay Jekyll, and I'm the Executive Director of School and District Transformation at CDE. I've had the privilege of supporting Risley and other schools in the district over the past 2 years, which, as is showcased tonight, has so many great things going on, and it has been a real pleasure to work with your school and district teams. I'm here tonight to provide an update on Risley Academy, or International Academy, which, as you know, was directed by the State Board of Education to implement a partial management plan. And tonight I'm joined by Risley's partial management entity, Relay GSE. Before we totally dive in, I wanted to provide some background and context on Risley's turnaround history with state board action. As you know, in 2017, our state board directed action for Risley after the school reached the end of the accountability clock. Specifically at that time, the board directed Risley to implement a partial management plan with the Achievement Network, or ANET. In that order, the state board required that the district return if after 1 year the school remained in priority improvement or turnaround. And then, so they did remain in priority improvement and turnaround and returned in 2018. And at that point, the state board directed full management. Following an RFP process, the district selected MGT as the full management entity, and the contract with MGT began in April of 2019. So in the spring of 2020, MGT and the district proposed some changes to the contract and the plan, with a plan to provide Risley with more instructional coaching through a partnership with Relay. Relay provides, as you know, intensive instructional coaching at other schools in the district. But of course, the onset of the pandemic created a number of uncertain and really unprecedented obstacles to that full management contract at Risley. So in particular, as you know, the district needed to create systems and structures to support remote learning and to support health and safety of students and staff. So as a result, the district requested that the state board amend Risley's directed action from full to partial management this past summer. And in September of 2020, the state board agreed to temporarily amend Risley's order. The state board did request that the district return next month in March to determine whether to continue full or partial management into future school years. So under this partial management plan, as Jen will dive deeply into, Relay provides intense support to the school and has decision-making authority over key instructional areas such as curriculum and assessment. And Risley's plan also includes partnership support from the University of Virginia and instructional coaching from two partner and ongoing support and coaching from the district. And so our goal today is to provide you with an update on the work at Risley since the transition this past year. And before I go any further, I just really want to thank the team at Risley and the district staff for being open and welcoming to the CDE team as a part of progress monitoring. And we recognize just the incredible challenges of this school year. And the schools have been more than willing to provide us with everything that we need and have really showcased all the hard work that they've been doing on behalf of students. Again, so our agenda tonight is to have Relay share an overview of their work at the school, and I'll close with observations from our progress monitoring lens and discuss the next steps with the state board. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jen Bauer, Relay's Associate Dean, to talk about Risley's plan and the support that Relay has been providing for the school.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Good evening, Board President Voss and members of the board. As Suzanne said, my name is Jen Bauer, and I'm an Associate Dean of Regional Support at Relay Graduate School of Education. Prior to joining Relay, I was a Director of Academics at Yes Prep, which is a large public charter school in Houston, Texas. As part of my work with Relay for the past 3 years, I have worked with schools and school systems across the nation as they work to implement systems to transform student achievement, including with principals here in Pueblo. As you may recall, Relay Leadership Programs has 2 arms of its work. The first is our National Programs for Principals and Principal Supervisors, which is a year-long fellowship designed to immerse leaders in research-backed, high-impact practices to lead student achievement. Pueblo has been sending leaders to our national program since 2014. The second arm of our work is regional support, or individualized coaching for schools and school districts where a coach like myself works with local leaders to customize the content they learned during the fellowship to support and accelerate its implementation. It is the second arm of the work at Relay, which afforded me the opportunity to work first as a coach and then partial manager at Risley starting in July of 2020. This evening, I want to name the priorities of our work at Risley and then share some reflections on our progress. At Relay, we use our theory of change to help drive our coaching. Because Principal Janelle Manis attended Relay's National Principal Program last year, she had a year of immersive learning experiences with Relay, which meant that she could immediately focus on improving skill and core practices and the systems and structures at Risley. With these 2 priorities in mind, the first order of business was to ensure Risley's physical environment looked and felt like the safest and best place for teachers and students to learn. To that end, Janelle and Assistant Superintendent Suzanne Morey were able to secure funding from the district for a school refresh. This was a critical signal of change in both leadership and culture at Risley this year. Throughout the summer, Janelle worked side by side with Suzanne to ensure Risley was a different, safer, more welcoming environment for students and staff to return to in the fall. And so what you'll see here is first, the bears in the foyer got a bit of a facelift, and old posters were replaced with pictures of current Risley students. The front office got new paint, carpet, and this mural that was completed by the new art teacher at Risley. This is a signal to parents, staff, and students that we take deep pride in being Risley Bears. Old posters were removed to ensure the new bulletin boards reflect the priority of the school, which is truly student achievement. And finally, because Janelle deeply values the work her teachers and staff do each day, she wanted to create a space for them to recharge. After the physical building refresh, the work shifted to focus on the data the district helped gather from interviews of staff, students, and the community in the spring of 2020. This data was compiled into the school readiness assessment document, and it told us that we needed to focus on 3 big rocks. First, building a collaborative and predictable school culture. Second, building systems to support exceptional students. And third, naming and building foundational best practices in instruction. With these 3 big rocks in mind, I'd like to share updates on the work done to address the gaps the school readiness assessment data revealed, and share some evidence of progress we've made in these areas. Because student and teacher feedback indicated a lack of clarity and buy-in for the school vision, Janelle, Suzanne, and I used time in July to focus on creating a new common school vision that would be the driving force of the school's work. After Janelle named her personal vision and core values that she believed embodied Risley, she took the critical leadership step of taking her ideas to school leadership, both assistant principals and the building leadership team, to gather their input and make revisions to ensure all school leaders were invested. This important step of seeking input from her building leadership team signaled Janelle's value for building a team of people to drive change at the school based on data. Once the vision and values were finally rolled out to staff with opportunities for them to internalize and apply the vision and values to their own work, we began reflecting on what the student culture of Risley was versus what we wanted it to be. After a deep dive into previous systems, Janelle and her assistant principals began to identify the routines and procedures we would need to implement going forward to realize the vision and values they had just named. After these routines and procedures were named, the assistant principals began the process of building and then facilitating professional development for each routine and procedure. Once the staff had internalized, practiced, and then rolled out the routines and procedures to students, the leadership team began a system of daily monitoring, data gathering, and feedback to ensure the routines and procedures allowed for a strong start to the school year. The work done thus far to address Risley's big rock number one is strong evidence of Janelle's growing ability to build and implement systems across her school. And we think one of the most powerful pieces of data that we have to demonstrate the renewed commitment staff has for the work being done at Risley is demonstrated in the increasing staff attendance that you see here. Despite the ongoing challenges COVID-19 presents, staff are showing a deep commitment to the students at Risley and the work that we know we still need to do. The second big rock we needed to tackle was to create systems and schedules to ensure the Risley Bears who need the most support actually receive it. The school readiness assessment data revealed a lack of strong systems to support our exceptional students, so this was a critical priority. Janelle addressed the gaps by first prioritizing individual meetings with her ESS staff to deeply understand both the work that they do to support exceptional students and what support teachers needed to be most effective in their jobs. Next, she used the data gathered in those meetings to develop a master schedule that allows for inclusive instruction across all grade levels and PLC time for ESS teachers each day. And finally, Janelle added an ESS teacher to her building leadership team, which ensures the ESS perspective is represented and integrated into whole school decision-making. Each of these actions again demonstrates Janelle's increasing ability to identify and implement strong systems that will lead towards greater student achievement outcomes. The final big rock we focused on this year is building foundational best practices in instruction, because the school readiness assessment revealed gaps in teacher knowledge and skill and effective practices for teaching in a turnaround environment, as well as a lack of consistent coaching and support for teachers in previous years. At a purely systems level, Janelle began to tackle this big rock by looking first at opportunities to increase PLC time for math and ELA teachers. She took her ideas to Suzanne, who helped her craft a master schedule that would allow for 68 minutes of PLC time each day for math and ELA teachers to meet with each other and a coach. The next critical system the team needed to implement was building a consistent observation feedback schedule. Once the schedule was built, Janelle implemented a weekly leadership team meeting with building assistant principals and her instructional coaches that allows Janelle to name each week's observation focus areas based on data the team collects. This system of gathering data, naming priorities, and building weekly observation schedules has become a consistent part of leaders' work at Risley. And now that the foundational systems are in place for teacher observations, coupled with the daily PLCs for teacher coaching and data review, we have moved into ongoing support for leaders on how we continue to coach to build rigor into our classroom instruction. The evidence of Janelle's work to address gaps in foundational best practices is seen here. During the first 18 weeks of school, teachers at Risley, especially our priority teachers in math and ELA, received on average an observation at least every other week. This would seem to indicate that the systems are gaining hold to address gaps in classroom instruction. Additionally, while we know that classroom observations to gather evidence of effective, rigorous instruction are one important touch point for supporting teachers, we also know that systems of support like weekly data meetings, real-time coaching, and time for deep planning are critical as well. Janelle's master schedule adjustments to allow for more PLC time for math and ELA teachers show a clear attempt to address the gaps named in the school readiness assessment around teacher coaching and support. Of course, the work highlighted thus far to address the gaps identified in the school readiness assessment are meant to move us towards our ultimate goal, increased student achievement. And so I want to take just a quick moment to name for you that this slide, as well as the next few slides in the presentation, have been revised since you received your initial slide deck because of new data. This year, Risley and other Pueblo schools are again partnering with the Achievement Network, or ANET, to ensure there is a strong system of interim assessments that are rigorous, standards aligned, and allow us to compare Risley's data to other middle schools in Pueblo and throughout the country. Coupled with the time provided by the district for leaders and teachers to process the interim assessment data, we are working to build a strong system of teaching, assessment, and analysis at Risley. Over the course of the school year, Risley adheres to the district-provided interim assessment calendar, which you see here, to provide 3 interim assessments for both ELA and math. The assessments occur in October, January, and again in March. Because we are in the middle of our interim assessment 2, the majority of data that I can share this evening is from our first round of assessments in October. So let me take a moment to orient you to what you are looking at on this slide. In the table, we have year-over-year interim student achievement results for ELA coded here as 2019-2020 data in the green column and 2020-2021 data in the orange column. A1 simply means assessment 1. We are excited to see that student proficiency has remained steady in 6th grade and that we see higher levels of proficiency in grades 7 and 8 in the 2020-2021 school year. What is important to note about the numbers you see here is that Risley is being compared to a network of other middle schools across the country on these assessments. The schools in the network tend to be other middle schools with similar demographics and several who are also in turnaround situations. So while the 28% average correct number you see in 6th grade's A1 data for this current school year might appear low, what is true is that Risley students were only 2% below the network average. In other words, when we compare Risley students' data to similar student data across the country, Risley students are very well aligned. Similarly, you'll see the year-over-year proficiency data for math shown here on this table. One highlight I'd like to point out here is 8th grade math. So not only did the 8th grade students show a small percentage increase in proficiency on their 2020-2021 A1 interim assessment, these students actually beat their network average as well by a full percentage point. Overall, we are encouraged by the positive trends in assessment data for both ELA and math. And then the last student achievement update I want to share is preliminary data for 7th grade math from the A2 interim assessments that are currently happening. I wanted to share this initial data to highlight that the upward trend we saw in the fall seems to be continuing. When we look at the A2 data from the 2019-2020 school year and compare it to the A2 data from the 2020-2021 school year, we can see that this year we are on track to show increased proficiency of 5 percentage points. Again, we are very encouraged by this preliminary data, and this looks to be reflective of the positive trends that we saw in our first round of interim assessments. Additionally, following this current round of interim assessments, Janelle and I will move forward with analysis and response to the data to build on the momentum Janelle has created of ensuring strong teaching and assessment systems at Risley. Finally, I want to share a brief summary of the buckets of work I've largely focused on with Risley during the course of this school year. These buckets are leader coaching, co-observations, and finally, other types of professional development and planning with the Risley team. In general, I spend over 20 hours a month supporting Risley through these 3 avenues of support. As part of the other professional development and planning work, we are sharing student achievement data with CDE during the progress monitoring visits. CDE will speak later to additional output data at Risley. And with that, I am going to turn it back over to Lindsay to share her overall reflections on the work we've done at Risley throughout the first semester.
Thanks, Jen, for sharing all of that. As you all know, CDE plays a key role in progress monitoring in schools with directed action. This process includes a few components, which includes announced site visits, unannounced site visits, presentations to the local school board, we are here, and updates to the State Board of Education twice per year. To give you a sense of what those progress monitoring visits look like, each visit is 2 to 3 hours long, sometimes longer, and includes an opening discussion with school leadership, with district leadership, and with Relay about data, about trends, and activities that are happening in between visits. We also include observations of instruction, we share and unpack data, and have a closing debrief and a discussion of next steps. So the next slide has a lot of detail about our overall reflection of progress. I'd love to summarize these and provide you with a bit more context. So Jen offered a clear picture of the school's area of focus and the support provided by Relay and the district. And this slide highlights our reflections on the school's implementation of their improvement plan. So the school really hit the ground running with a strong strategic plan in place that built on what was working, but really honed in on those gaps. Relay, UVA, the school, and the district ensured that plan was in place at the beginning of the school year. The leadership team, particularly the principal, has demonstrated effective turnaround competencies, such as driving for results and monitoring the plan. We've observed a few times when the school and district team have needed modifications to their plan in response to data. There appears to be a strong shift in school culture among staff and increasing cohesion around a shared vision for Risley. Staff attendance has improved despite the challenges of the pandemic. And the leadership team exhibits a deep commitment to the success of Risley. They've put into place such detailed plans that they regularly monitor and adjust as needed. Relay provides strategic, consistent support focused on robust instructional systems. The dosage of support is intense, but is focused on building the capacity of the leadership team and the staff. As Jen mentioned, leadership team has experience with Relay practices, and Relay works across other schools in the district, which appears to support the school in implementing these practices quickly. And the district's engagement with UVA has focused on strengthening district systems of support for schools, especially around instruction, and aligns really well to the work that's going on at Risley. So, and as COVID continues to be a huge part of our reality, the school and the district have clearly worked closely to put in place COVID safety protocols, and close alignment and communication with the district during this time has been critical to the success of Risley and students as they move between virtual and in-person instruction. In terms of next steps, as the school named and as the data shows, student attendance continues to be an area of focus for the school, especially as students return to in-person. And Risley has put into place a number of systems, particularly around assessment, around observation and feedback, and data use. And these systems are in initial stages of implementation. And as they move back to in-person and look ahead to next year, continuing to refine these systems will be important to ensure stability and consistency. So in general, as Jen mentioned, we track leading indicators of school progress as a part of our progress monitoring. These indicators include attendance, out-of-school suspensions, behavior referrals, and teacher attendance. Tracking this data this year surely has been complex as students are moving between in-person and virtual. And statewide, we are seeing similar challenges in ensuring participation in assessments that does make data comparison complicated, but not impossible. And so this data presented here is as a very high level summary of the data, some of which Jen has shared, but I wanted to build on. And as we mentioned, teacher attendance has improved substantially over last year. Suspensions and office referrals have also declined substantially, which is similar to trends in other Pueblo schools. And while fewer students took ANET, we're cautious in drawing comparisons, but with participation caveats, we are seeing scores holding steady and improving slightly. And we're encouraged by those results. And so lastly, I want to share just some general reflections on the shift from full to partial management at Risley this year. The plan last spring for Relay to provide instructional support and coaching to the leadership team at Risley aligned with the district's approach in other high need schools, and has provided Risley with an intense level of coaching around instructional systems. The partnership with UVA has complemented this work. It's focused on strengthening those district systems of support and aligns to the work with Relay. The district has provided critical and necessary supports for the school, both in terms of instruction and COVID-related supports. The onset of COVID-19 required so much close coordination between the district and school, and Relay's alignment to district decisions about in-person and remote instruction has been very important. And while I know we all wish we were in a different position with the pandemic, this continued coordination and support for the school remains critical in ensuring they can successfully implement their school improvement plan. So just to give you a preview of what comes next, again, we really want to thank the Risley team and the district team for their openness and honesty in participating in progress monitoring. It's so clear the team is working diligently and tirelessly on behalf of students. So a few next steps: the state review panel, which is an external body that also provides a look at progress at Risley, visited Risley last week. They'll develop a report documenting the progress at Risley, which will be shared with the State Board of Education. CDE will provide a general progress monitoring update to the State Board in February, which will include an update about Risley and also Central and Minnequa. And Pueblo will present to the State Board in March to request the partial management order be maintained into subsequent school years. And through all this, CDE will continue to progress monitor the work at Risley, and we'll provide the board with another update on progress in June. So that concludes our update, and thank you so much for your time tonight. Jen and I are both available for questions.
Well, thank you for that great presentation. Dr. Wright, do you have any questions?
No, I do not, but I greatly appreciate your presentation, your update, and information. Thank you.
Judge Mace?
No questions, but once again, I also would like to extend my deep appreciation to you. It seemed like, I don't know if it was a year ago or so ago, that we got a report from others that was rather disheartening and didn't have a whole lot of detail to it. And I'm really just very pleased with the progress that's been made. And extra kudos go out to you guys for making the progress that you have at a time that was really difficult to kind of gather the data that was necessary to come here. But I am really excited about what's going on at Risley, and I'm really looking forward to future reports. Thank you so much.
Mr. Farrell?
I'd like to echo a lot of what Judge Mays had to say. Thank you for the report. I'm excited to see that there's progress even amongst changes in the model of how Risley's being supported, as well as the challenges that come with being in the middle of a pandemic and continuing progress in education. So thank you for the update, and I look forward to another update in June.
Ms. Clementi?
I'll echo and add my thanks and delight at this good news, and congratulations to all of the Risley staff and to the support that you all have given you and district support staff as well. I'm thrilled at this progress. It's exciting. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you as well. I think it's exciting work that's going on at Risley, and I look forward to seeing more progress. Thank you. We'll move now to the 2021-2022 online school proposal.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Suzanne Maury. And as Judge Mays kind of alluded to earlier, we have to start rethinking how we do education in light of the pandemic and what the needs of our students are. And so I'd like to the board to hear our proposal for a district-run K-12 virtual online school. So Ms. Maury.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Macaluso. President Voss and members of the board, tonight, Zach Matter, our Director of Technology, and I will be presenting a new school proposal to open a centralized district-run K-12 virtual online school in the fall of 2021. So I'm going to start the presentation with the rationale and thinking behind opening a new K-12 online school. The COVID-19 pandemic, as we all know, has brought a myriad of challenges to public education during the past year. However, with those challenges have also come some innovations, which are likely to change public education forever. Although we believe the majority of D60 K-12 students and families will happily return to full-time in-person instruction as soon as it's safe to do so, there will undoubtedly be some students who will want to continue with online instruction from the comfort of their homes. We know that there will be several different existing and even new online learning options available to D60 families next year. And therefore, if we want to retain and hopefully increase D60 enrollment, it's imperative that we provide an excellent online option for students at all levels. It's for that reason that we're proposing D60 open a district-run K-12 virtual online school in the fall of 2021. The goal would be to provide a high-quality, self-paced, and individualized full-time virtual learning experience for students in grades kindergarten through 12th grade. Our current model of distance learning, in which each individual school in our district is responsible for staffing both in-person and fully online learning experiences, has resulted in teachers being asked to significantly adjust their instruction, sometimes from one period to the next. Existing board-adopted curriculum is not specifically designed for online learning. Financial resources, master schedules, especially in our secondary schools, and expectations of educators have been stretched to their limit. Although, and I really want to emphasize, that D60 has performed admirably given such short notice to adjust to the health and safety needs of the community, the current online instructional model at each individual school is just not sustainable long term. In our proposed new school model, any student who chooses to learn 100% online next year would have the option of requesting a formal transfer from their current school to the new K-12 online school. Establishing a district-run K-12 online school would allow us to hire D60 teachers, administrators, and support staff who would specialize in online learning, and to provide an online learning management system and curriculum designed specifically for online independent learners. It would also provide centralized management, budget, and support needed to ensure a very consistent learning experience for all students across our district. An online school could also provide possibly a viable option to those students who are homebound or adjudicated or have other unique needs. This school would be a choice option for families, and we would need to create an application process to be implemented later in the spring. At the end of tonight's presentation, we're going to be asking the board to support moving this proposal forward. This will include establishing a task force who will lead the district-run K-12 virtual online school design effort. This design effort would include the selection and eventually, hopefully, board adoption of a new virtual online platform and curriculum. Ultimately, D60 will need to submit a new school application to Colorado Department of Education, and once approved, we would need to request a new school number from the state. It's important to note that the deadline for submission of a new school application is June 1, although they request that materials be turned in earlier if that's possible. Now I'm going to turn it over to Zach Mather. He's going to start with outlining what it might look like to purchase a virtual online school platform and curriculum.
Good evening, Superintendent Macaluso, President Voss, and members of the board. As Assistant Superintendent Maury said, an online virtual school platform includes online curriculum that's designed to provide students a self-paced, independent learning experience from home or from wherever students choose to learn, with the option to receive intermittent, small group, or individual synchronous online interactions with content certified, licensed D60 teachers when needed. This is different from the daily synchronous learning approach we are currently implementing. These virtual online school platforms have a number of shared characteristics, such as supports for grades K through 12, a system designed specifically to deliver online instruction, student access to a wide range of secondary courses, including electives, honors courses, AP, even when its student enrollment is small, flexibility for personalized learning, the ability for students to work at an accelerated pace or to have more time for content mastery, and student access to asynchronous instruction and course content 24/7. There's simplified master scheduling and staffing for secondary students, in that students are not grouped into scheduled sections as we see today. Systems allow for a content licensed teacher to be the teacher of record of any course the system offers within his or her licensure or endorsed content area. Since all lessons are already created and available to students asynchronously online, there is limited teacher planning required, eliminating the traditional preps of which we are familiar. To go along with this, there is, of course, a lot of curriculum and technology. For instance, fully online K-12 curriculum would be aligned to Colorado and national standards. All course content would be accredited and NCAA approved. Again, it is a combined online curriculum and learning management system, all in one. Secondary courses would include CTE, AP, honors, and options for dual credit or concurrent enrollment. And of course, these platforms would be compatible with current district technology such as Chromebooks, Infinite Campus, and Google. Additionally, printed materials would be available to support student learning when necessary. Social emotional learning components are also a part of these platforms. There would be supports for 504, ESS, and CLDE students. And some other features such as text readers, captioning, multi-languages, and translation would be available, in addition to some online study aids, including highlighting, annotations, and underlining.
In terms of the student experience, students would be working at a self-paced rate, and they would be asynchronous learners working independently. Students would have options for direct interaction with our D60 teachers through virtual office hours, scheduled small group tutoring, and so forth. So our teachers could reach out to students, the students would be able to reach in. Technology devices, as we have done during this past year and a half, would be provided by the district, and we would also provide support with internet access via hotspots as needed. In terms of the teacher experience, as we've said, all of the systems that we would choose from would utilize D60 licensed teachers to support our learners and content mastery. And I do say it in that way because supporting independent online learners is not just supporting them with the content, but it's also supporting them with engagement, making sure they're keeping pace and engaging online independently every day and so forth. For the elementary teachers, online platform systems typically recommend a student ratio of 1 teacher to somewhere between 30 to 50 total students at any given time. Elementary is staffed with grade level specific teachers, 1 per class. Most of the systems would allow for multi-age staffing. So a teacher being able to teach, for example, some groups of first graders and second graders, but the students themselves are always assigned to a specific grade level course. Secondary teachers, online platform systems recommend staffing 1 or more teacher per core content area at the middle school and high school level. So for example, at middle school, you would have a minimum of 1 language arts, science, social studies, math specific teacher, and at the high school the same. And then depending on student enrollment, you would consider adding additional content specialists such as foreign language, electives, CTE, and so forth. The secondary teacher recommendation is typically a student ratio to teacher ratio of 1 teacher to somewhere between 125 to 200 total students at any given time. And again, it's important to note that the teacher experience is quite different than what we're experiencing now in terms of the synchronous, because the students are working independently with the teachers just providing the support for small group instruction or reaching out to individual students. Additionally, each level, elementary, middle, and high school, would need to staff ESS and CLDE teachers, depending on the student enrollment needs. We would put together a comprehensive plan that is very customized for professional development specific to the platform and curriculum that we selected. We would monitor and reach out, meaning the teachers and administrators would support this as well, to monitor and reach out to students to ensure engagement and on-track progress. The teachers would invite struggling students to the small group or individualized synchronous sessions to assist with that content mastery. Again, as Zach mentioned, limited instructional planning is required of teachers since the actual lessons are already created online and available to students. And in fact, approximately 80% of the grading is performed by the system, with only about 20% performed by the content or grade level specific teacher. In terms of recommended staffing needs, it of course would be dependent upon the overall enrollment at each level, at each grade level. But we would anticipate minimally the following: hiring a K-12 principal. Of course, when you have a school and an individual school number, the principal position is required by the state. Depend upon enrollment, but likely we would have an assistant principal at each level to really oversee the content and the support specifically to students at that particular elementary, middle, or high school level. We would need secretarial or operational support, likely a technical support coach for students and staff to assist with troubleshooting through some of those technical issues. And as I've said before, elementary grade level teachers, middle school and high school core teachers, other specialty teachers, including ESS and CLDE teachers. In terms of a school site location, we would have to determine a specific site or sites for staff where they would be teaching from, and we would anticipate that students would be learning from home.
So talking about a virtual online platform, there is an associated cost, and we've done some preliminary numbers just to give you an idea. So we're not entirely sure what an enrollment would look like. That's one of the to be determines. But based upon some numbers of 500 elementary students and 500 secondary students, 1,000 students total, a purchase of an online learning platform and curriculum would range between $1.2 million and $2 million. That being over 50,000 would obviously require an RFP process and board approval. It is also important to note that this cost would be recurring and the yearly cost would be comparable, adjusted upon student enrollment. This is because all these models are based on licensing, access to the curriculum, and access to the platform. Now, we are exploring the potential use of ESSER II funds as a way to help get this off the ground. For instance, we could potentially look at the startup costs for the virtual online platform or curriculum in year 1 and year 2. We could utilize the purchase of specialized or additional technology for teachers and students. Examples of that could be additional touchscreen devices, styluses, additional monitors, etc. And we're also looking at the potential of extra days and or early onboarding of administration, teachers, and support staff to include additional PD days.
Finally, I wanted to share some proposed next steps and a high-level timeline. So you can see from this slide, January, February would include the presentation we're doing today, of course, to you. We would be starting our work with the task force. We'd propose posting and hiring a principal as soon as possible so that they could be onboarded and be part of the task force work. And we would also be posting that RFP for the online platform / curriculum. In March, April, the task force would review all of the applications for the RFP, choose an online platform, bring that to the Board of Education, hopefully for approval, and also approval of a PO to purchase that. We would look at finalizing a budget for next year, and we would also post and hire the immediate core staff. Starting probably in late April into May, we would engage in an enrollment application process for families and students to indicate their interest in choosing a fully online learning opportunity. we would have to complete the CDE application, turn that in, obtain a school number, begin planning the professional development, and then over the summer, providing the professional development to staff with a purchase of that platform to begin July 1, and then anticipate opening the school simultaneous with the other openings of our other K-12 schools. So at this time, keeping in mind that the task force would be put into place to answer a lot of detailed, specific details about this particular school, we can answer some high-level questions that you might have. So I'll turn it back to you, President Voss.
Sure. Dr. Wright, do you have any questions or comments?
First of all, I do think that this pandemic has highlighted the fact that students learn differently and that we have to do something different to meet the needs. So understanding that from henceforth, online learning is going to be with us forever, I think it's a good thing for us to look at that. I know that as you move forward, I'll have more questions, but something that popped in my head now would be the teachers themselves in terms of the master schedule. And you don't have to get into this today because I understand it's a process. And I actually look forward to what you're going to bring forth. But looking at the master schedule, the teachers, and one question would be based on enrollment, if a teacher is hired for online learning, is there a chance that they may be shifted if during the year the numbers are down? And the other question is, what would draw students to our online learning as compared to others? You know, you may have already thought about that. Like, what would make them say, hey, I want D60 online learning and not some of the other competitors, if you will. And I think that's pretty much right now, because there's a lot coming. But I look forward to it. And if necessary, I'd love to be a part of that process to help us to ensure that we do something that can meet our students' needs. But thank you for the consideration. Appreciate it.
Judge Mace.
Wow. That was a lot to try to grasp. I guess a couple questions, Ms. Mori. Who all was involved in the presentation and the discussion about what was made tonight?
So this was just an initial high-level senior management discussion, because that's why we're putting the task force together. So we certainly shared it with our executive directors and cabinet, and it was most significantly worked on in terms of some of these details. Mr. Mather, Paula Jerez, who is our instructional technology teacher on special assignment, and myself. The next step is to put that whole task force together with stakeholders, including administrators and teachers, and so forth.
Second observation is it appears that somehow or another the number of 1,000 came up 500 elementary or elementary K-8 and then high school. How was that figure arrived at?
It was just to give you a ballpark of cost versus number of students. So it's not necessarily a number we're anticipating, and the numbers do not have to be equal between elementary and secondary, although sometimes the cost is different for elementary and secondary. So just to give you a ballpark, we said, let's say 500 elementary, 500 secondary. It was just to put a number because it is a per pupil cost typically.
Have we compiled any data from our experience this year with the online portion of what we've been doing to gather any kind of meaningful takeaways from it? You know, are we successful? What has been the response from our educators? I continue, and I know Superintendent Macaluso hears this all the time. I'm one of those dinosaurs when it comes to technology and all of that stuff. I would imagine that and maybe I'm wrong on this, but there are some educators that might not want to be involved in the virtual portion of this. I would guess that you talked about professional development, but I would suspect that we have learned that there needs to be some really deep down instruction on how we deliver this kind of education to our students. Did I ask a question there, or do you see where I'm going with it?
I think I see where you're going with it. I would say, Judge Maines, we've received a lot of anecdotal data and specifically feedback from the Teaching and Learning Advisory Group, where we're asking them, how is it going? What are your greatest challenges? What are your greatest needs? What could the district and our organization do to support you in this, in this work? I think we also hear, again, anecdotally, that it is sometimes difficult to use the curriculum materials that are adopted right now and to adjust them to make them suitable to both a synchronous and an asynchronous learning experience, a hybrid learning experience. I think we've heard from some teachers that switching back and forth, teaching both in-person sections, class periods, as well as online, brings its challenges. So I think we have heard from our teachers about what some of their needs are, as well as what some of their challenges are.
Are our ESS students going to be included in, I know you talked a little bit about opening it up to everybody. Are there special challenges, not only in terms of the delivery of the process, but in terms of the necessary number of educators to teach and the coaches to help? And how would that look like, I guess, in terms of, would a coach actually, or an aide, whatever you want to classify it as, would there be someone that would be specifically assigned to a home that they would be in? Or I'm obviously I'm struggling to figure out how that would work.
So yes, the K-12 online school, any student would be eligible who applies. So whether they're an ESS student or a CLDE student. So to answer your first question, with ESS students, they have their own individualized learning plan that has specific goals. They have specific hours that are required to them each week. And that would have to be delivered by an ESS licensed teacher who would be hired to service the online learners. If the more ESS students we had enrolled, the more ESS teachers we would have to hire. So we would have to align the staffing to the needs of the students who are enrolled. And that would go the same for the CLDE students. Does that help to give you an idea? So for example, an ESS teacher could invite and have regularly scheduled times with the students that they serve for one-on-one or small group instruction over the course of the week, so that those students would be guaranteed their hours of service, in addition to just the regular coursework that they're completing online.
Thank you.
Mr. Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. Mather, Ms. Morey, for the presentation. I think that online schooling is a corner of the educational market, so to speak, that D60 hasn't really had a piece of the pie in. So it's exciting to consider this. I have a number of concerns, as I'm sure anyone who looks at a topic this large would have. And I know that there has to be a balance between automating education and continuing to provide purposeful and impactful education. Can you talk a little bit about that, maybe?
Exactly. So if you've heard of sort of blended learning, it's a combination of independent learning online, in this case with sort of pre-created lessons that align to the standards and NCAA expectations, as well as the opportunity for some synchronous small group support around content areas by D60 teachers. And again, it could be a student reaching in saying, I need help with, or it could be a teacher reaching out, tracking the progress of a student, seeing that they're not engaged or perhaps stuck at a particular place in the curriculum for that semester. So in that way, it would be a blended approach. But I would say the majority of the time it is designed for an independent learning experience.
And that, I think, kind of leads into one of the other things that the student to teacher ratios jump out at me. And you mentioned that it's a different model. You have to think about it differently, and I understand that. But it didn't stop it from jumping out at me. And it's you mentioned, I think, that it's those ratios are recommended by the platform, correct?
Yes, when we did our research, we specifically asked what the recommendations, they all make a recommendation of the approximate teacher-student ratio. And what we shared with you was the range. Some platforms will say 200 to 1, other platforms might say 125 to 1, depending exactly on how their curriculum and platform works.
Got it. Okay. You mentioned, I think, a little bit already, you touched on this, but can you tell me a little bit about what the task force will actually look like, how it'll be made up?
Sure, Zach, we were just looking at that. So do you want to just talk about, we haven't finalized the exact membership, but we have talked through the different positions and parents, et cetera, who would make up the stakeholder group. Zach, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sure. So right now, as Assistant Superintendent Maury said, we're drafting it, so it's still in draft form. We're somewhere around the range of 25 members that we have, or at least spots that we're looking at. We're aiming to get a teacher representative, obviously, from every band, elementary, middle, and high. More often, we're going for 2. Some administration in terms of principal, assistant principal. We have some spaces for parents in there as well. And then, of course, a smattering of some others from around the district that, such as like myself, looking at the technology side, some of Assistant Superintendent Maury's staff to look at the curriculum and the instruction side. So we're trying to cast a pretty wide net. And we've penciled in some names of people we think would have an interest or would bring a very good perspective as to what they've been dealing with since March, or maybe some experiences they've had in other places. So we're getting close. Thank you.
The other thing, obviously, that jumped out at me, in addition to those ratios, was the cost. I think that jumps out to anyone looking at it. And I know this is a big undertaking, and I know that there's a cost associated with it. I know that the cost estimate that you gave is based on an estimate of enrollment too, and there's no way to know for sure what that would look like. Would maybe the task force be engaged in gauging interest and surveying parents and students to see what possible enrollment might look like? Again, I know you can't look in the crystal ball and find it, but to test the interest and see what's there.
Mr. Farrell, that's certainly something that we could consider, be the timing of getting that initial information to us in terms of planning moving forward. And then, of course, we'd have to finalize because it would be a transfer. It would be a transfer from a current school to this new school. And so that student then would be enrolled not at any of the existing K-12 schools, but at this new K-12 online school, that would be their home school, if you will.
Okay, I think that takes care of everything I jotted down. Thank you.
Ms. Clementi.
Good evening, and thank you for your report and all the work that's gone into this. I do think that this is a next move that we have to make. And like others, I have a lot of questions. We're looking at this as another District 60 school, right? So, I think we need to consider how student movement would happen between a school like this and our brick and mortar schools. Because with our what's our mobility rate, we have to have some parameters, I think, that go around that. Are you considering the same process of curriculum adoption that we use for everything else, so that there would be an opportunity for people to look at this new curriculum, et cetera, et cetera?
Ms. Clementi, I think we would have to. That's our board process for adopting curriculum. The RFP process would fall to the stakeholder task force, just like we have a task force to adopt a new curriculum. This stakeholder group would go through that same process with an RFP. We would bring it to you. We would have to include some sort of a public viewing. That would probably look a little unique, but yes.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. I also think that with this new opportunity, perhaps we need to look at a different way to structure the school. We're looking at teachers doing different things. And so it makes me wonder whether we actually need assistant principals, or whether counselors or community advocates might be more appropriate, or that kind of thing. So I'm hoping that we don't get stuck in that same box, that this online school has to look like a brick and mortar school in its internal structure. We have lots of opportunity there, I think. I also think that it's probably time to get our associations involved. We're looking at creating it sounds like a new category of teacher. Are we looking at an online teacher being paid on the same salary schedule? Are they doing the same or commensurate things? And how is that going to look? It's just a piece that we need to look at, I think. Perhaps it's a different thing than an educator that gets up every morning and goes into a brick and mortar building and works hand in hand with kids every day. But I do think that needs the PEA at the very least needs to be involved in some of this consideration. It sounds like this is going to be competency based, so we're presuming that kids can move through these schooling more quickly. It's not going to be based on seat time, correct? Okay. So my other concern is that we're building 4 brand new brick and mortar buildings. And I feel like we need to stop for a minute and look at the overall sense of the district. We don't want brand new buildings that are empty. We don't want old buildings that are empty. Veteran buildings, loved buildings. And yet we need to offer this new opportunity, which is going to make it's going to be a shift, I think, overall in attendance, these people are going to, these students are going to self-select in, right? So it's going to change attendances. It's going to change staffing. It's going to change a whole lot of things. So I'd like to see us look at that kind of 50,000 foot view as well. And along with that, I think we need, as a board, to look at a budget plan over the next five or 10 years, including the use of the ESSER 2 funds, as we begin to look at these new opportunities and providing the best opportunities we can for Pueblo's kids. So I guess those were more thoughts than questions. They're all things I think we probably need to really consider. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to me. They started
Ms. Maury,
out as questions.
Ms. Maury, can you touch on Dutch Clark online learning and how that would fit in with this new school?
I think we need to dig into that in detail so that we're really clear in communicating that out to our families but in general, Dutch Clark is it's an alternative learning campus for high school students. So there are some qualifications. It is also currently a blended learning model, but blended in that the students have to attend in person as well as learn from home. So the model looks a little different as well. And of course, it's only at the high school level, and it often has 5th, 6th, 7th year seniors. So it's serving a different population, I think, than the K-12 online school.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mr. Farrell kind of touched on this, but the cost jumped out to me as well. And I know you mentioned the ESSER 2 funds, but if that doesn't pan out, are there any other ideas of how we may go about funding this?
Well, there is a per pupil that comes with each student that obviously, some of which would follow those students directly to this school. Sure. Other than that, there are not any other grants that we're aware of right now that we are pursuing or anything like that at this time.
Okay, thank you. Well, for me, I think what I think back to is the annual CASB conference that we all attended last year. And it seems like yesterday that we were all there, but one of the main themes of that conference was disruption and the evolution of education and having to look forward and really look and see what that's going to look like and change and adapt. And I really think this is something we need to be thinking about and looking at. So I support moving forward with this proposal. So thank you so much for your presentation.
So just to formalize this a little bit.
Excuse me, Ms. Murray, may I ask a couple more questions, please?
Sure.
That have been, I'm pleased that President Voss brought up Paragon because for a couple of reasons. One is they are a distinct school of their own. And I know at the last meeting we had, we heard some significant progress that had been made over the course of the last couple of years. And I would hate to see anything disrupt that. I just really think they're doing a fabulous job over there. And I'm glad that you've identified what the different circumstances would be involving Paragon, because the one thing I would not like to see is that Paragon goes away or something like that. They've done a very good job. The second thing is, and this is more of a statement, I think, than anything else, and I think President Voss talked about it, is I too am excited about this. I'm also scared, and I think we need to proceed with caution. But I hope the public doesn't take the fact that we're asking a lot of questions and believe that somehow or another I guess I'll speak for myself that I'm opposed to it, because I am not opposed to it. But I think these are the types of questions that we need to ask. I guess one of the other questions that I'm not one to push the can down the road, but are we giving ourselves enough time to fully study this? And if your folks say, yeah, we think we're ready to go, I'm fine with that. You know, I just wanted to ask that question, but things will look a lot different. I'm excited about it, and like I said, I'll be honest with you, I'm scared about what it might look like. But I think if we sit down and we just talk about it and try to answer all of these concerns and questions that we have, that we will come out with a plan that is going to be successful. I agree also with Mr. Farrell. It's time that we got in this game. We haven't been in the game, and we need to get in it. And I think we've seen as a result of not being in it that we've lost some students that would not have gone elsewhere. So I wish you the very, very best. I am more than willing to help in any way I can to see that this is successful. And I think this ought to be, quite frankly, an agenda item for the board at every meeting, not just our regular meetings, but on our work sessions, and see what steps we're going through and where we are as we go through this, and having to finish out this school year with the pandemic. You know, so there's a lot on the table. Thank you. That was a very interesting presentation that you made.
Are there any other questions from the board?
I don't have a question.
Sure.
I just wanted to maybe state also the timeline is what I was thinking about too, because I remember when we looked at community schools, we looked at a certain time frame that certain things had to be done. So I'd definitely be interested in us looking at the timeline to ensure that we do well what we do. And I'm sure you're going to do that, but I just want to put that out there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morey and Mr. Mather, for your presentation.
So do we need any kind of direction or a vote or anything to move forward? Or are things okay? I don't see that it's in.
It's not on an action item, so there's no vote required. But you just give the board as a whole will give an indication that we'll move forward in the process.
All right.
So when the RFP comes forth, you'll accept that and vote on that. But right now, it's just an indication to move ahead with the process. And I'm hearing from the board that we move ahead with the process. Thank you, Zach and Suzanne.
Thank you.
We'll move now to the 2019-2020 annual financial report.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Tom Sister, who is with Holting and Company, and he does our audit, and so he will be presenting our financial report. Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me tonight. I think looks like Dave is pulling up the summary of my presentation here. I'm going to, during my presentation, just walk down through these items, but certainly if you have any questions at all at the end of my proposal, I'll be happy to entertain them. Well, first of all, my team was on site for about 3 days in August, reviewing and testing internal controls. We designed our audit program based on those tests with our field work performed over a week in October. Controls appear to be well designed and operating effectively, and we found that the overall financial condition of the district is good, and the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. So we issued an unmodified or clean opinion, as we have in past years. Looking at number 2, this will be a little bit familiar for those that have been on the board before, but I like to talk about the distinction between government-wide and fund financial statements. The fund statements reflect how the district keeps its books on a day-to-day basis. Adopted budgets and your monthly financial reports that are provided to the board are based on that fund presentation. The government-wide statements combine all your funds into a single presentation and present on the accrual basis. Government-wide statements include capital assets, debt, and other long-term liabilities that are not included in the governmental funds. So this first statement in number 3 is the statement of net position. This is a government-wide financial statement, and you'll see where the distinction between government-wide and funds come into play. But I'm going to highlight a couple of things here and explain a few things. Cash and investment balances were up about $285 million compared to last year. This is primarily due to unspent proceeds from dollars for the capital bond project. So that's to be expected right now. Other assets up about $3.5 million. It's comprised of taxes receivable being up about $2.2 million. Prepaids being up about another $2 million. Capital assets overall. We saw some effects of the building project as that was getting off the ground. Capital assets were up $1.6 million as outlays exceeded depreciation for the year. Long-term liabilities, and this is where you see one of the larger differences in this government-wide versus fund presentation. Long-term liabilities were up $185 million. This is comprised of a $62 million decrease in para-liabilities. That's really due to state contributions to the plan that's happened the last couple of years. I expect, unfortunately, we're going to see this go the other way next year because that state contribution of $225 million a year was put on hold with COVID. So that didn't happen for the coming year. And so that was also comprised, of course, of your bond proceeds this year, your new debt of $254 million. And then last in this section, we see that there was about an $84 million increase in net position. That was primarily due to the reduced pension liabilities and other related liabilities to the pension. Moving on to to look at the general fund, looking at ratios between ending fund balances and expenditures. We see pretty similar numbers, a little bit of a tick up this year compared to last year, where ending fund balance would cover about 56, 57 days of expenditures. And this is a reasonable position to be in, somewhere between 45 and 60 days. Long-term debt, moving on to number 5. Obviously, the big increase in bonds payable, very much expected due to the $254 million bond issuance. Otherwise, bonds and capital leases were paid according to debt service schedules. Number 6, this is really showing where we go from where you go from beginning fund balances, the activity for the year, and your ending fund balances for each of your funds. So I'll highlight a couple things here. The general fund balance was up $8.3 million compared to last year. It's comprised of revenues were up $1.8 million. That's primarily due to about $982,000 in state equalization increases and $1.5 million increase in tax revenues. Expenditures were down for the year, so that difference resulted in an $8.3 million increase in fund balance. Grant activities. In grant funds, revenues are earned as monies are spent on allowed activity. So revenues and expenses in your grants fund are going to equal. And so that resulted this year in grant fund activity being up $1.1 million compared to last year. Debt service fund balance was up $7.8 million as taxes related to new bonds exceeded payment requirements at this point. In the building fund, big increase there, of course, since that's a new fund and that's where all the bond monies landed. So that was up $255 million compared to last year. And then finally, the capital reserve fund balance up $3.2 million due to increased revenue, but less spending on those projects in the current year. Probably, I would guess, as the emphasis move toward building projects would be my guess. Internal controls mentioned that that's a component, a fairly significant component of what we looked at, and we didn't have any significant findings versus it on the financial statements this year. So good work to the finance staff and the work they do on that. For federal awards, we had 2 major programs we tested this year. We tested child nutrition. We also tested Corona Relief Fund, so that's obviously new for this year. And we did have some deficiencies in compliance requirements that were reported on, both for Title I and child nutrition related to the free and reduced count. And that's really a repeat finding from last year, and that's about student applications for free and reduced being appropriately evaluated in the child nutrition department, in the food service department, and making sure that they're meeting those eligibility requirements if they're getting free and reduced lunch. So we found enough differences in there that that was included in our findings. And lastly, I just want to express my appreciation again to the board and for having us on board again to do the audit, as well as for the preparation for the audit by the finance department. And as it has been the last several years, really just good work giving us all the information we need, having it be timely, and be able to get through it and have it well explained to us. They do, as they have in past years, do very good work over there. At this point, I'd like to open it up. Anybody have any questions about the process or the financial statements or anything else?
Dr. Wright, do you have any questions?
No, I do not. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Judge Mays.
No, I don't. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Mr. Farrell?
No questions. Thank you for your report and your work. And thank you to Mr. Horner and his team for their work and working with you as well.
Ms. Clementi?
No questions again. It's great to get another clean audit. We appreciate your work as well as all of our financial team. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't have any questions myself, so thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
We'll move now to the 2020-2021 proposed amended budget.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, I'll introduce Dave Horner, who will present that report to us. Mr. Horner?
Good evening. Before I dive deep into our budget, I came up with another sheet that I want to share related to funding that I hope helps explain a little bit of all the conversations that are going on around out there. Can somebody tell me this is big enough that you can see it adequately, or do I need to blow it up some more?
Blow it up some more.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So there's multiple conversations that have been happening at the state level, and I really struggled to understand it with all the different runs, all the different conversations from Colorado Finance, the governor's office, the legislature, and everything. So I'm hoping this helps us all understand a little, and then we'll get into the budget. House Bill 2014-18 is what funded us at the start of the school year. And we were funded at $8,299.94. In our original document, I had $8,299.64. So basically the same amount, whether it's a typo on one end or the other, I'm not sure. But so that's where everything is being compared to this number, which in my reality doesn't make sense, but it is what it is. So when they're talking now about a supplemental budget possibly being approved by the legislature, they've been saying the average increase is $44 across the state. If you compare this number that they're proposing for us, it's a decrease of $17.61 when the average is an increase of 44. That was real confusing to me to start with. What in my reality is this budget, we were working from the December funding model, which is this column here, which is 8,142.16, because the January run didn't come out until a day after I presented this to you, which is actually 8,138.72. So our reality of what we're dealing with now is this number here, not this 8,200 because of the declining enrollment and the amount of money that they've taken away from us. So if they come back with a supplemental, there's real possibilities of going up $140 for us as we look at that possibility. What I did in our January amended budget over here that I'm going to show you in just a minute, I took $44, added it to our December number, and came up with $8,186 because this supplemental run hadn't come out yet. So potentially, if the legislature approves all of it, I did not, create in our budget, which obviously we get the money and it just drops to the bottom line, this other $100. So I hope that helps explain a little bit as you look at it. Then the other piece that is out there is the governor's proposal for next year, which is a huge number, would be $9,082 for us, which is compared to this House Bill 2014-18 is $782 more per student. Or as you look at compared, if we do get the supplemental, it'd be $799, but potentially from us in our December run, that's $900 next year. My biggest concern is if they do this, is it sustainable? So these are all the conversations that we have to have this spring, because what we're hearing is the legislature is wanting to see the March forecast and the June forecast before they would agree that this is a reality, along with all the other projects that they want to fund that they can give K-12 school. So this chart, which you don't have in your packet yet, but I'll get it to Jerry after the meeting so that you guys can have it to look at it. I tried to do, the mathematics to compare all these different numbers, but the key thing is all of them go back to this starting point, not to this interim where we are at in reality. That was what was really difficult for me to follow in all this conversations. So before I move on, I don't know if there's any questions about this document.
I have one, if I may. So are you saying that this January amended budget is built on a $2.86 million decrease?
it is, if you're comparing it to the original budget over here.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that before I move on? Okay. I am going to stop sharing that and present another document that I think helps answer a few other questions. And I'm sure I need to improve this a little bit. Okay. Oh, that's too big. You can't see the graph. Just 1 second. I will have it up for you in just a second. You're all assuming I'm talking to myself here, but we're all right. Enrollment is obviously drives a lot of the conversations that we've had tonight and everything. And if you look at this is D60's enrollment, same graph as I've shared in previous years that we see. One of the interesting facts that I want to show you right now, this is our line without charters, the line including our whole district, which includes charters. But if we go back up here, I have data that if we look at our decline, part of the conversation is, we have decline that's going year by year, and then we also have a COVID effect. So we went from 16,015 down to 15,283 this year. D70 went down and the state went down. So what I tried to do is look at our enrollment, if we look at by percentages, has been going down 2.25, 2.99, 2.16, and 4.78. But if you look at it as like over 2-year period, we're at a 2.61 decline over a 2-year period. One of the conversations is, did we do something worse or better than other people in the state? If you look at a 2-year decline for D70, they're a minus 7%. If you look at the state for a 2-year decline, it's 3.47. So our decline, yes, we have a track that we're declining, but our COVID effect decline wasn't any worse or maybe even less than some of the other districts in the state. That's all I'm trying to show here. Does that make any sense to, I see some heads positive there. So, all right, let me get into the budget, which we are hoping that you will approve tonight. And we will walk down through the budget. Is that big enough? I don't know how to make it much bigger. Barb, can you see that okay? Thank you. All right. As we talked about at the previous meeting, we do have a substantial beginning fund budget because we were able to transfer expenses both last year and this year because of all the CARES and CRF funds and ESSER funds that we've received. Really been the salvation of us this fiscal year and will be for the next couple of years as you listen. We have ESSER 2 money that we're now becoming eligible to get to. We can't quite get a hold of it yet, but it's there. And then we're hearing that President Biden is even talking about another round of funding for schools, which obviously none of us know because it hasn't come out of the legislature. So multiple things going on there. As we start looking at our revenues, let me go back up to show you audited, which is what our auditor just talked about, is this column right here in the middle. So it's, as we go down, it's either third from the right or, fourth coming backwards is last year. So as we look at it as a comparison, we had $143 million in total resources. Now we're going to have $135 million, but we also transferred expenditures to the grant as we were able to receive some of the CRF funds that we were able to move expenses over. So that helps make this work. As we look at our transfers in here, in our athletics fund had real tough times this year. Obviously, you can't sell much popcorn and peanuts and hot dogs if nobody can get into the stadium or the gym or anything to watch. You can't hardly sell tickets, so it's hard to get sponsorships and everything else. So we are proposing to increase the transfer to athletics to keep them stable of $200,000, which is in this interim line here. Our insurance fund, we are proposing another $200,000. We are right now able to cover some of our unemployment expenses through COVID funds, but that is where we would end up covering it, and there has been substantial hits on that as unemployment insurance claims have gone up. We're not sure whether we'll be able to continue to charge to all the ESSERS and CARES funds. Our capital projects, last year we provided $6.8 million. In the original budget, we reduced it to $6.1 million. We have included back $700,000 to get us back to the 6.8. Our logic is we are really struggling. Maintenance is vehicles and things. We need to get a replacement cycle going on those. We also have bought numerous more computers, and over the next couple of years, you're going to see that we need to put probably another $1 million a year into technology replacement cycle. So we're going to need to be growing that. I mean, obviously, we haven't had time to even design what that plan looks like, but Chromebooks have a limited life and they're not as user friendly that way at the end of the life. So we have to replace them when they expire. Do I see Barb has a question? You're muted, Barb.
I thought I fixed it. Thank you. Does technology come out of capital projects, or is there a special technology fund that we have?
No, it is part of capital projects for the replacement cycle. They do have some general fund money, but it's a capital asset, a lot of them that you're buying. And the more computers we buy, then also the more servers you need, the more switches, the more, with our one-to-one, it's a whole new world for everything. So that's our logic why we have that there. We transferred this 1.6 million was, if you remember, in November, the state talked about they had used COVID funds for at-risk students, and we had to account for it differently. So we had to move this over to our grant funds, and we also moved expenditures over to that. So it was a kind of a shifting of the activity. Our preschool transfer went down because of enrollment numbers were not up as much, so we didn't receive as much per pupil funding. And we had to increase our transfer to the charters. Their enrollment was a little higher than we had originally budgeted. So that is what relates to all those transfers. So we end up at $135 million. This budget does show a 9% reserve, which when we had finished last year with all our savings from our COVID savings that we generated by not spending funds during the spring, we ended up at 20.7, and this is at the policy level of 9%.
But doesn't this show that we have spent $15.5 million out of reserves?
Yes, we have spent funds
Okay.
out of reserves.
To make that 135.9 balance.
Yes.
Okay, just to be clear. Thank you.
And if we had not received COVID funds, it would not be a workable budget. Absolutely. We were able to keep staff on as part of what they were asking us to do, whether we did not make adjustments as enrollment dropped, I guess is the easiest way to say. So conversations that will have to be continued going forward into next year as we develop the budget. As we have talked about previously, one of the key things that saves us is that we are able to do, as a declining enrollment district, this income averaging or enrollment averaging. And we do most every year since I've been here. We're at this 5-year number, but using the 5th year averaging to hold up our enrollment. So you'll see here that we are carrying the 8186.19, and that we started the original and the proposed budget at 8299.64. So that is down substantially from our original budget. And then these are the transfers that we showed you about. I want to show you one other page similar to the conversation that we had a week ago, as soon as I can get there. In this document, as we moved money that were set off by the CRF funds within the CARES funds, we have tracked them on a separate line so that as this moves across the page over time, we can see that our salaries, were 40 million, 39 million, 38 million, and we're 39.7 in actual salaries, but we didn't pay for them all out of general fund. But just so that we can track it over time, we made it as a separate line item. So I believe we have a well-balanced budget that will cover us to the end of the year. We have ESSER 1 funds we are accessing now. We did cover a lot of expenditures from the CRF funds and finished using those by the December original deadline. They've now extended that deadline to allow more time, but they did it so late we already had it taken care of. They have extended the ESSER 1 funds till September of 2022. And the ESSER 2 funds are available to us until September of 2023. And we are starting to develop a plan. You heard Suzanne talking about using part of the ESSER funds, ESSER 2 funds, toward this new school, which does fit in the criteria. Extended learning fits in the criteria. There is some language in there about use of ESSER 2 funds for air quality, but we're trying to understand. They also have restrictions about capital investments on what fits. So a lot of the things you want to do about air quality are capital investments. So we're waiting for the final guidance to come down, or they don't ever give us really final guidance. It's kind of step-by-step guidance. But so as we work to develop a plan for the ESSER 2s, it is a substantial amount of money and will really benefit us. We are going to work our way through that shortly. So I'm open for questions about anything else in this budget document, and we would hope that you would approve us so that we can continue.
Dr. Wright, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you, Mr. Horner, for your presentation.
Judge Mays?
No, thank you, Mr. Horner. I got to listen to you 2 nights in a row now.
Hopefully it's the same story.
Very consistent.
Mr. Farrell?
I don't have any questions. I do want to say thank you for that spreadsheet at the beginning. That was helpful in tracking all these different discussions. So thank you for that, and thank you for your presentation.
Ms. Clementi?
No questions. Thank you.
No questions for me. Thank you, Mr. Horner. We'll move now to 11.0 consent agenda. Are there any consent agenda items anyone would like removed to be voted on separately?
This is Barb. I have a simple request for information. I don't want to remove the instructional calendar, but I have a question, a concern about the unbalanced semesters. There's almost 3 weeks more of instructional time in the second semester than there is in the first, and I just at some point would like some information about what impact that has. I know that since we've pushed to move the end of the semester before Christmas, that it has created an imbalance. But since we've gone to 4-day weeks, a 3-week imbalance, it's more than it's like 15 days. No, yeah, it's almost 4 weeks. So I assume in particular high school educators were involved in the creation of this, but I would like just some further personal information about how that is working and whether it's making a difference. Maybe it means that I need to take calculus first semester instead of second semester, and whether we're still guaranteeing the same education to everyone.
Board Member Clementi, would you like to hear from Mr. DeCicero? He serves and runs the calendar committee. I think we've been operating on that for about 2 or 3 years. I think that imbalance with the semesters. And as you recall, it was a recommendation primarily from high school that the semester ended, at that Christmas time. But Eric is on the line, so he's more than willing to.
I'm happy to have my questions answered in an email. If that doesn't create more problems for Mr. DeCicero.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Any other questions? Then I move that we approve consent agenda items 2 through 10 as presented.
Second.
I'll call for the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi?
Aye.
Mr. Farrell?
Aye.
Judge Mays?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Dr. Wright?
Aye.
Next up, we have 12.0 action items. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, we do have a resolution for conditionally approving the charter school renewal application for Pueblo School for Arts and Sciences at Fulton Heights. So at this time, I would recommend that the Board of Education approve this renewal.
President Voss, I have some questions. We got a chance to ask some questions before about it, and I just had a couple about the ESS. So
sure.
Tell me what the procedure is.
Mr. Bump, were you going to jump in there?
I was. Superintendent Macaluso, President Voss, members of the board. The appropriate procedure, I think, would be to get a motion on the table. So we should have a motion to approve the resolution as presented in a second. And then the questions, I think, would be appropriate after that.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move the Board of Education approve and adopt the resolution conditionally approving the charter school renewal application of Pueblo School for Arts and Sciences at Fulton Heights as presented in the January 26th, 2021. That would be tonight's board materials.
I second it.
Okay, Dr. Wright, you can ask your questions at this point.
Okay, Mr. Weston, thank y'all so much for the additional clarification that you gave for ESS. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. I just had a couple of things in looking at what you sent. You indicate you have one ESS teacher, and I think you have 20 some students. What is the disability certification for that teacher?
Dr. Wright, I honestly don't know. I mean, as liaison, I don't work at that school. So I'd rely on Sandy probably to maybe give you some details on that. I know that she communicated earlier today that she was good with their explanation, but I'd probably defer to her on that if she knows that.
Tom, I know that Dave Martin was supposed to join us. Was he having internet issues? I don't see him on the line.
Right. He got home to find out his internet was out. So unfortunately, he wasn't able to join.
Dr. Gusevich, do you know the answer to that question?
Yes, I do. The majority of the students that we are serving over there are SLD students, and it is an SLD. It is a learning disabled qualified teacher who is providing the services over there. We have a very positive working relationship with that teacher and the work they do on the IEPs. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, that answers that question. And I did see that. I did see the great support that District 60 supplies to them. And but I still had a couple of others. Are all the students mainstream? Because I know you have a classroom. I didn't know whether or not any of them were self-contained. But if it's SLD, then are they all mainstreamed?
I think Sandy just got disconnected. Let's give her
I'm right back.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Are all the students mainstreamed?
Most of them are, yes. They do have some hours where they are getting services from their individual special ed teacher, but most of them are in gen ed classes.
Okay, thank you. And the last question I had talked about how parents can consider whether or not to accept the services provided for the students. I understand that, but there was some statement about if they saw that that facility did not meet their needs, then they could go elsewhere. So I just had a question about what kinds of needs could you not meet at that school for ESS students?
Perhaps a child with severe autism, and they are not able to meet the child's needs where they would be in a 303 or an all-day classroom with a teacher. We work with them and the family to try to place the child in an autism center-based program that would be more appropriate to meet his or her IEP needs. So we work with the family and the school to make those appropriate adjustments as necessary.
Okay, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate you answering my questions.
Is there any other discussion? I'll call for the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi?
Aye.
Mr. Farrell?
Aye.
Judge Mays?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Dr. Wright?
Aye.
That will move to our second action item, Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. I would recommend that the Board of Education approve the student fee resolution and fee schedule.
Ms. Clementi.
I have a question. Is it incumbent upon us to read this entire resolution This is the resolution adopting the student fees that are in the new amended budget. So, Mr. Bump?
No, can you hear me? It's not necessary that the board read the entire resolution. These documents have been posted with the agenda and they are all before the board. So the recommendation for the motion is appropriate.
Thank you. Then, if I may, Mr. Voss,
Sure.
President Voss, I would move that the Board of Education adopt the student fee resolution and fee schedule, which would be effective July 1, 2020, as presented in tonight's board materials.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I'll call the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi?
Aye.
Mr. Farrell?
Aye.
Judge Mays?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Dr. Wright? Dr. Wright?
Okay.
Dr. Wright?
I think I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Wright.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Wright, we're calling the vote on the student fees.
Okay. Aye.
Dr. Wright? Thank you.
Thank you. I had to switch computers. One went off. I had to grab another one.
With that, we'll move to our final action item, Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. That brings us to the 2021 proposed amended budget, the adoption of appropriations resolution authorizing the use of a portion of the beginning fund balance, and a resolution for interfund borrowing.
With that, I will move that we adopt the 2020-2021 proposed amended budget, appropriations resolution authorizing the use of a portion of beginning fund balance, and resolution for interfund borrowing for 2020-2021 as presented in tonight's board materials.
Second, Clementi.
Any discussion? I'll call the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi?
Aye.
Mr. Farrell?
Aye.
Judge Mays?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Dr. Wright?
Aye.
We'll move now to 13.0 board discussion recommendations for agenda. I know Ms. Clementi had sent a few agenda items for future agendas. Ms. Clementi, do you want to touch on those for the benefit of the public?
Sure, thanks. These are actually requests for board work to do in retreat. Retreats are informal, of course, and are open to the public, but provide us a little more opportunity to actually get into the weeds and actually do some of the work. I would like to see us have several budget retreats, look at review and assess our budget, look at our needs, see where our holes are going to be, where our projections are going to be. I think we need to start creating some kind of 5 to 10 year plan, set some priorities when we know that we're bare bones. If we have priorities and we end up with a little bit of extra money, then we know what we're going to do with it, that kind of a thing, rather than just filling holes, that kind of a thing, with a timeline and such, and start that planning to replace those one-to-one devices, those kinds of things. So I'd like to see us start to work on studying the budget, planning for the budget over a series of retreats. Secondly, we have several people, I think, involved in the UVA training. And honestly, I'd just like to have some informal information about that training, what they're learning, how it's impacting us, who's involved, what kind of time they're investing, and maybe even if it's appropriate, sharing with us some of the exercises or the personal development that they're doing. And and I would love to see that in a retreat setting as well. It doesn't need to be a big formal deal, just a kind of a sharing piece. And then lastly, as has been mentioned, this pandemic has truly exacerbated and made more than clear much of the inequities in our system. And I would propose that this board, as again in a retreat form, begin to do some of the work on equitable outcomes and opportunities for our kids. We have to begin. We need a definition of what equitable outcomes are, what we mean when we talk about equity in District 60. I'd like to see us develop a plan, do some professional development as a board, so that we can, once we know as a board how our own awarenesses are, and as we can improve our self-awareness, then we can begin to look at the system that our policies create, and we can begin to truly evaluate them, so that we can, again, we can provide equitable outcomes and opportunities for our kids. And honestly, I think that kind of work would be best done with some kind of a consultant, at least to begin with. So those are my three things.
Well, thank you, Ms. Clementi. If there's no objection from the board, I can start working with Superintendent Macaluso and Ms. Patrone to get those retreats scheduled and on the calendar.
President Voss, I'm wondering, and Ms. Clementi, this I guess more directed to you, is I think you're one. I think every discussion item you brought up really has significant merit to it, and I think it's something we ought to be involved in. I'm just wondering, would the UVA presentation, might that be beneficial for the public at large to be aware of? I think it might be kind of exciting. Maybe we could put it on one of our work agendas.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd be happy with that. I just don't want to make, I think it's an interesting piece, and I think we all have to be aware of it. I don't want to create a whole lot of more work for people who are already working 20 hours a day.
Well, I think it's all helpful in light of the presentation we got tonight from Relay as well. So.
Yep, exactly. Well done.
Yeah, sure. I'm on board with that, and with that modification, President Voss, I'm go.
Okay, we can go ahead and move forward with those then. Are there any other future agenda items from the board?
No, I would just like to also state I'm in favor of going forward. And Board Member Clementi, I would just like to see us appropriate enough time for each of those items. So with the retreat, to make sure that we give enough time for us to fully be able to engage. So it might be we have to spread them out a bit, but I think each is worth spending time looking at. Thank you.
Agreed. I see these as an ongoing process, not a one-time shot. This is going to take a lot of work.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to 14.0 announcements. It looks like we just have our upcoming board meetings there. Is there anything else from the board before we adjourn? All right, then at 9:06 p.m., we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.